Welcome to Audio Branding, the hidden gem of marketing. Sound plays a more important role in human behavior and our decision-making than you may realize. In this podcast, I'll help you understand the art and science of sound so you can better influence others in business and your life. I'm your host, Jodi Krangle. Let's delve a little deeper. Thanks, Jonathan. I'm really glad to have you here. I appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I like to start off with a question that I'm pretty sure you know is coming. Can you tell me a story about an early memory of how sound moved you? Maybe back when you were a kid.
And you and I talked previously, a couple of weeks ago off camera and told you a few stories about the Nobel Prize winner and that, and also about my grandmother, who, when I was a boy, I lived with my grandmother and my mother, and she was a silent film organist. So she'd be playing piano around the house in the background. She also did scenario construction for Lowe's and RKO back in those days. Those were like the big studios back then. And then worked for Mr. Fox. Came down here from the Pacific Northwest. So I grew up hearing the most complex constructions. She was a great virtuoso. My grandmother was a tremendous musician. She was and a just absolutely fabulous human being. And so those things, I'm sure, influenced me, and I started picking out tunes, on the ukulele because the guitar would be too big for my fingers at that age.
Of course.
And humming around the house. And so sound, I'm sure, burnished itself into me in a very different way. It is hard, though, so you're asking a real big question. What makes the listener into wanting to be that thing, or the listener that just wants to hear the concert, enjoy the music, enveloped in the beauty of it, so forth? That is, of course, a mystery. And I'm sure there are many answers or maybe no answers to that.
Well, I mean, it's clearly you picked up the ukulele because you wanted to start, emulating your grandmother? You wanted
one wants to express themselves, right?
Sure. So when did you start playing the guitar then?
Seriously, about 10.
Okay. So it's been a while, obviously.
My aunt bought me an instrument, and it was only a half-size guitar. Because still at 10, you're very small.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
And at 10, and then by the time I was 16, it was a big-time commitment. 14, I became a man. Okay. And what I mean by that is that I had done the path of so many people where you go to the store and buy gizmos and other things to cover up your mistakes and weaknesses. As Stravinsky said, yes, style, the sum total of all of my defects. So, so at 14, I made a realization that to be a real artist, to be a real player, not just a folk musician or pop musician or that, one had to completely envelop oneself in that study. And that is a very depressing thing.
Why depressing?
Because what you're saying is now I have to sit 6 hours in a chair. And you're 14.
Now the commitment happens.
Yeah. So that is, everyone thinks it's this, glorious light. And it's not. It is saying that you have made an oath to yourself, which is the only oath anyone can really make. And that it is going to require tremendous labor and work and discovery and, seeking, wandering, so many things. So.
Sure. Yeah. So at 14, what were you hoping to accomplish when you made that commitment?
To become one of the great players in the genre. When I was
Okay.
16, I saw Segovia at the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion in Los Angeles and couldn't believe the polyphony of his not only technical prowess and mastery, but also the beauty of the sound, and that he was self-contained. He didn't need a group, which is the common kind of pop thing, right?
Yeah, sure.
He was self-contained, and they were complete arrangements and transcriptions of great music, of course, which he's known for bringing to the world single-handedly that time.
Mm-hmm.
So that think about what Michael Phelps does. He was swimming since he was, I don't even know how old.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, he went when he won all his medals. Was the great Olympic swimmer, as people know, and he was. Many of the trials were in Europe, and so he went back to Europe like the year after he had done that. And people said, "Why?" He said, "I never saw Europe. I was either in
Oh,
the pool or in the hotel. I'd pass
that makes
by the
sense.
Eiffel Tower. I'd pass
Yep.
by the Arc de Triomphe, you know, and I never saw it. I don't know, you know, I just food and going to the pool.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I mean, you were starting to really devote yourself to this at 14, and then 16 you saw this concert and it blew your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So when did you start touring yourself?
Probably
Like, what
didn't
was the
start. Well,
progression for that?
I did television gigs. I did spot gigs, you know, but real
Hmm.
touring, big touring was probably not until late 20s and early
Okay.
30s, meaning, you know, long tours in the Amazon or in India or in Europe, Romania, the Philippines, you know, wherever. But I was starting to build a catalog at 27,
Hmm.
24, I think, 24, 27.
Okay. Okay. And you have a series on an app, right?
On
Adventures in Touring?
That's right. In my
Yeah.
app, which just type Jonathan. If you're an Android user, you go to Google Play. If you're an
Hmm.
iPhone user, go to Apple Store. It's all free. Free. Did I
Hmm.
mention it was free? And
Always nice.
yeah, so you download the app, and on there are audio files. There are performance videos, and also a series I have, Adventures in Touring, which
Hmm.
talks about once one steps out of the door of their domicile, something will happen because you're now out into the world. And if somebody would have asked me, what do you think your adventures will be? And now I look back at what many of them were, say, I never would have guessed that ever in a million
Mm.
years.
So, is there a story that you remember most vividly from those tours that you want to talk
Oh, I've got
about?
thousands of them. I could talk
One is
about
fine.
meeting the head of JPL on a
Hmm.
plane when I was touring the American South, or I'd talk about almost dying in the Amazon. People want to hear the dying story. And so I was in Brazil. I was representing the United States government as America's musical ambassador through the State Department, which, of course, is an arm of the White House. And I was playing concerts all throughout Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, in Brasilia, the capital, in Belém. Belém is the Portuguese word for Bethlehem. And on the Amazon River the Amazon River goes up the central part of Brazil and then goes into Bolivia. There are islets, or what should we say, little towns built on the river. You know, it's common with art, to the degree of knowledge we have of how civilizations were built, to build something on a river, because you've got water, right? So whether it's the Euphrates, the Tigris in those lands, or whether it's the Ganges in India, the Seine in France, etc. So I was being taken on a private boat down the Amazon River before my concerts. It was for a couple days, and met Amazonian Indians, had a wonderful time. But the next day, I was being introduced to the city outside in a stage outside, where the mayor and all the glitterati, all the big whoop-de-doos, all the big grand high habish, the big mucky mucks were there because they wanted to sell the final like 10 tickets or something in the auditorium. Now, they had built an auditorium I hope this isn't too long, but they had built an auditorium in the early part of the 20th century for Enrico Caruso, the great tenor. Mm-hmm. And they wanted an opera house and auditorium because they wanted to bring culture there. Fitzcarraldo, right? I'm thinking of Fitzcarraldo taking the boat over the mountain. And so I'm being introduced. I'm up on stage. There's 10,000 people out in the crowd. And they offer me their national dish, which is kind of like a soup. In Philippines, it would be adobo, Hungarian goulash, whatever it is. And so one part of my brain, and I don't remember if I went through this story with you, one part of my brain said, don't even think about eating that. That was my amygdala, my reptile brain, my survival mechanism was saying, all of your education is meaningless, you idiot. I can smell what that is and tell what that is. And you're a creature. Every monkey has its tree, and you're out of your tree, monkey. And so that one was one side of me. Of course, the social side of me, the civilized side of me, the side that said, oh, let's all get along, peace, love, dove, was saying, my God, that would be the rudest thing in the world in front of 10,000 people on a stage. It's like really offensive, right? Really bad. No. So I knew that. And naturally, my civilized brain, which is not as smart as my survival brain, much smarter.
I think that's the case for most of us. Yeah.
Said, oh, sure. Love it. Right? I took a sip, and literally just a couple sips. I mean, it's not like some big thing. People, yay, eating the soup, the stuff. Thank you. Yeah. See you tonight, all that stuff. And so a concert comes, and about the ending piece of the concert, I didn't know who I was. I didn't.
No.
All that vanity and ego. I'm a classical musician. All of that stuff, those labels, go right out the window. And why is that? Because it's down to survival time now. So I did the concert and started to hallucinate on the last piece, and it was actually the best concert of the tour. And believe it or not, it happened to be the last concert of that tour. Luckily,
because
so now I go back. I'm signing autographs backstage. Blah 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 blah. Go back to the hotel room, and it's like you start going to pieces. You're not you. What you think you are. So I laid on the floor there for about 7 days, and becoming very sick, almost dying. Had cholera is what it was. So cholera is common in certain countries and certain eras. Mm-hmm. And there is no preventative or quote vaccine for that. They had some crude thing that didn't work, kind of like other ones. Oh, no. And so that is one of my stories. Of course, I did survive. At that time, I was a bone. I mean, I was really thin, super thin. Mm-hmm. And I lost an additional, 15, 20 pounds, which was not healthy.
That's not good.
Not that quickly. And also when you're super thin, now I look like Karen Carpenter. That's another story, by the way. A Karen Carpenter story. No, that's a story in India. I have a Karen Carpenter story in India, but
I would love to hear your Karen Carpenter story.
Now.
She is definitely a favorite
I love
of
her.
mine.
I love her. My buddy used to work with her.
Yeah.
Malin Shanzenbach, passed away now. But he and Richard Carpenter went to Long Beach State together. And, of course, he knew Karen, Richard's sister. And Richard liked my friend's playing. He was a pianist. And, so now I'm in India. So go on. Just go right to it. Okay.
Sure,
so now I'm in
ahead.
India. And I had been in the country maybe 3 weeks and played in Bombay, played in Madras, played in Calcutta, and now I'm in Delhi. And so I had said, you know what, I'm going to go see the Red Fort. So I went and saw the Red Fort. And the next day I was playing an afternoon concert, and the ambassador was pissed off at me that I didn't do a recital at his home. And I said, the New York manager sent you the stuff. I have the thing in my suitcase, Mr. Ambassador. Sir. Yeah. And And I was asking him things like, why are we here? He says he can lop a nuke into Pakistan. I go, that's a good reason. So now I'm in Delhi. And so I've toured the Red Fort. I've come back at night and concerts next day. And I go to, I'm tired. I want to relax. It's probably, 11 p.m. At that time, the satellite TV was from Hong Kong called Star TV. And that was the big thing. That's most of Asia. And of course, India's right up there in that region, right? So I'm back there. I'm the only person you ever met that went to India that did not get sick, because I refused to eat anything that had water on it because I knew what would happen. So, yeah.
Well, good for
I
you.
went to,
You knew what happened.
Yeah. Well, I probably learned my lesson in the Amazon by then, right? So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So now,
You knew.
So now I'm laying on the bed. I'm looking at the TV, and in videos, I don't know whether you know this or not, that in marketing, an artist may release a video in one country, but not have it released in another country. It's only here. It's only this, quote, territory, as they say. And you could be, we have rights for this Asia, for whatever territory it is. And so, you actually film videos for an area. So now I'm watching the video and I'm seeing a camera, and this is a classic television move where I see the hands of the pianist and I hear the intro, and I know the camera is going to focus on the hands for a while and then pan over to the singer, and on the downbeat, the singer is going to sing, right? It's going to law. And, well, I heard the sound. I said, oh, that's Richard. Right off. And okay. I said, oh, that's Richard. And that's his hands too. And so I go, oh, great. Oh, I love it. Oh, they did this. Yeah, here I am. Ha, ha, ha. Back home. Right? Carpenters. Mm-hmm. And starting to pan over. Nice little intro. And by the way, it's a song I never heard before. It wasn't one of the big hits. Right? One of that everyone knows here in the West. And some other song. And so they're panning over, and I go, oh, in just a second here, Karen's going to bellow forth. It panned over to her, and I audibly gasped. I'd never done that in my life, but I went, because she looked like an Auschwitz victim. I looked at her, and I couldn't believe it, right? I mean, extremely unhealthy. And knowing, and so immediately my mind went, well, no American, if they saw that, people would start, taking actions. They'd say, there's something wrong with this woman and she needs some help. And what? We're going to stand around and watch her, croak? That's not nice, right? So, that is one of my stories in India, that I saw her pretty much near the end of her life. And, she died. She had a heart failure at her mom's house in, where's the mom? In the valley or something up here in LA area. And, she was getting up and changing her dressing gown and then going to go out, to the living room and see mom. And, so that is my Karen Carpenter story.
Yeah. That's an unfortunate story.
Yeah. It's very unfortunate, but
I mean, I don't think no one knew about her
anorexia
problems.
was a new thing.
No, it wasn't talked about.
And I knew a girl at that time period, and I know that she would go into the restroom and throw up. She'd have a dinner and throw up, come back. She was thin as a rail, model, right? Yeah. Model thin. And that's what Karen wanted.
Eating disorders.
Karen wanted to look like those models, super thin. Kate Moss, I think, was the era. Right? After Twiggy.
Yes.
Yeah. And,
eating disorders.
Yeah, very
mental
terrible.
Health. I mean, a lot of it was not talked about. Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of things that are wrong with society today, but at least we're talking about these things.
Right.
Well, that's the end of this episode. Thanks for listening. And if you like what you heard, why not tell a friend about this podcast? It's available in all the usual locations. Until next time.